Legend spoke of spirits that guarded its depths, punishing any who dared enter. The healer explained that the herb could only be found within this forest, guarded by different strange spirits, including the spirits of those who had died seeking the herb. Filled with desperation, Gbazigi announced to the village that anyone brave enough to retrieve the herb would receive the highest reward he could offer. The person would marry his daughter, the Princess of Gbazar-Nkwoegwu, the most beautiful maiden in the village, and be gifted the king's sacred ring, a ring that symbolized the right to rule. Gbazigi's announcement swept through Gbazar-Nkwoegwu like wildfire. The promise of marrying the princess, with her renowned beauty and grace, was a tempting reward for many. The king's sacred ring, which symbolized the right to rule, offered a path to power that few could have ever dreamed of. Yet even these great rewards were not enough to sway the villagers. The stories surrounding the evil forest of Nkwoegwu were more powerful than any earthly reward. Every family knew of ancestors who had vanished in that forest, swallowed by its depths and never to return. Shadows were said to creep through the trees, hiding spirits who feasted on fear and despair. Days passed, and not a single villager dared to step forward. Gbazigi's condition worsened, his face lean and haggard and his eyes haunted by the fear that his sickness would soon claim him. In a desperate bid to save himself, he increased the reward. The person who retrieved the herb would not only marry his daughter and receive the sacred ring, but they would also be granted a parcel of land near the river, the richest soil in Gbazar-Nkwoegwu, and a lifetime exemption from taxes. Yet even this new reward wasn't enough to break the spell of fear over the villagers. It was during this time that a young man named Ovie found himself deep in the forest, hunting for small games to bring home to his mother. Ovie was no ordinary villager. He was the son of the eldest male in the Ovie family, the family next in line for kingship before Gbazigi had seized control. Ovie's father had been among those assassinated by Gbazigi's order, a death that cast a long shadow over Ovie's life. He had grown up with stories of his father's wisdom and strength, stories told by the elders and his mother to keep his father's memory alive. While Ovie walked through the forest, his heart heavy with thoughts of his lost father, he suddenly felt a strange chill pass over him. The birds fell silent, and the forest seemed to hold its breath. Ovie looked around, his hand tightening on his spear. Then, just beyond the clearing, he saw a figure emerge, a familiar figure clothed in a soft glow. It was his father's spirit. "Father." Ovie's voice was barely a whisper, his heart pounding in his chest. "Ovie, my son," the spirit said, his voice gentle yet powerful, echoing as though it came from the depths of the earth itself. "I come to you with a purpose." Ovie's father explained that Gbazigi's betrayal had not only disrupted the balance of leadership but had also angered the gods. His spirit, along with those of the other murdered heirs, could find no rest until justice was restored. "But father," Ovie said, fear creeping into his voice, "no one has ever returned from the evil forest. How can I succeed where so many others have failed?" "You will not be alone, my son," his father reassured him. "The spirits of your ancestors will guide you, and I will be with you every step of the way. Go to the forest, face its trials, and restore the balance that has been broken." With these words, his father's spirit faded into the mist, leaving Ovie standing alone but filled with a new sense of purpose. Despite his fear, he knew that this was his chance to honor his father's memory, to bring justice to Gbazar-Nkwoegwu, and perhaps to end the dark reign of Gbazigi once and for all. Ovie returned home and prepared for the journey. He told his mother of the task ahead, and though her face filled with dread, she did not try to stop him. She knew that her son was driven by something greater than himself, a duty to his family, his village, and the memory of his father. The next morning, armed with his spear, a pouch of food, and a small vial of water, Ovie set out toward the evil forest. The villagers watched him go, murmuring among themselves. They felt pity for the young man, believing he would never return, yet there was also a glimmer of hope. If anyone could break the curse of Nkwoegwu, Perhaps it was Ovie, the son of the rightful heir. As he approached the edge of Nkwoegwu, Ovie felt a chill settle over him. The trees of the evil forest were tall and gnarled, their roots twisted into grotesque shapes that seemed to claw at the earth. The light dimmed, even though it was still morning, and a fog clung to the ground, thickening with each step. Ovie took a deep breath and crossed the threshold, entering the forest that no one had ever returned from. The deeper Ovie went, the more oppressive the forest became. Shadows flickered in the corners of his vision, and eerie whispers floated on the wind. At times he thought he saw figures moving between the trees, ghostly forms that seemed to watch him with eyes full of sorrow and warning. But each time he was tempted to turn back, he remembered his father's words and pushed on. The first trial came when Ovie reached a clearing filled with beautiful luminescent flowers that glowed blue and purple in the dim light. He paused, entranced by their beauty, but a voice echoed in his mind, his father's voice, warning him to be wary. The flowers emitted a sweet, intoxicating scent, and as Ovie inhaled it, he felt his eyelids grow heavy. His mind began to fog, and he stumbled forward, nearly collapsing. Just before he fell asleep, he realized that the flowers were not harmless, they were a trap, meant to lure travelers into a deep, eternal slumber. Summoning all his willpower, Ovie staggered out of the clearing, holding his breath until he was far enough away from the flower scent. When he looked back, he saw that the flowers had closed, as though disappointed to have lost their prey. The second trial came when he reached a river that cut through the heart of the forest. The water was dark and still, its surface like a mirror, and there was no bridge to cross. As Ovie pondered how to get across, he heard voices calling to him from the water. He peered into the depths and saw faces of people who had entered the forest and never returned. They whispered to him, urging him to join them, promising peace and rest if he had just stepped into the river. For a moment, Ovie felt tempted, the weariness of his journey weighing on him. But he gripped his spear tighter and looked away from the faces. He remembered his purpose, his father's spirit guiding him, and with determination, he found a narrow path of stones that allowed him to cross the river without setting foot in the water. The final trial came as he neared the heart of the forest. A dense fog enveloped him, and shadows swirled within it, forming into nightmarish shapes. The shadows taunted him, whispering his deepest fears and doubts, trying to break his spirit. They spoke in voices that mimicked his own thoughts. "You are not strong enough. You are just a boy. You will die here, and Gbazar-Nkwoegwu will win." Ovie felt his resolve falter, but then he heard his father's voice once more. "Remember who you are, Ovie. You are my son, and you carry the strength of our ancestors." With these words in his heart, Ovie pressed forward, ignoring the shadows until he finally emerged from the fog. Beyond the fog lay a grove bathed in an otherworldly light.